Donald Trump has paused military aid to Ukraine and seems to be, from what we've seen in terms of the talks with Russia, that they are rehabilitating Russia. Now, Taiwan, as you know, follows its values by standing with Ukraine. It has, from the very start of the war, it appears to be a US policy reversal on Ukraine. Ukraine versus Russia. Could the US do the same on Taiwan versus China, on South versus North Korea? Is that a justifiable question to be asking?
Well, it's certainly not for me to tell people when to be worried, but here's how I look at it. And I train the Ukraine military routinely a few weeks every quarter. So I'm in there, I see this is going to have an impact. The United States is about 50% of military assistance that flows into Ukraine, and we're 50% that can't be easily replaced, particularly in things like air defense missiles, long-range artillery, short-range, long-range strike, short-range artillery. And so if this pause were to stay in effect for weeks or months, it would have a significant impact on Ukraine's ability to fight Russia. It doesn't mean they would have to capitulate, but it would be tough. So you should read into this that it's a serious issue. I think it's President Trump bringing a maximum pressure campaign against President Zelensky. A little bit, he was doing it anyway, but then after the poor meeting in the White House, it's gotten worse. I do think President Zelensky can extricate Ukraine from this, and I think he will by signing the strategic minerals deal and saying that the meeting didn't go well and maybe he was to blame. It's not the best look for the United States, but I understand it was a maximum pressure campaign. Now, after this is over, I would hope that President Trump then puts a maximum pressure campaign on Russia and Vladimir Putin. Now, if he does that, Taiwan should feel very comfortable. If he doesn't, then Taiwan could still feel comfortable thinking that President Trump always said he was going to, and his team have said they're going to prioritize the Pacific over Europe, and this is just them getting there faster. Still, though, I understand why some in Taiwan would look at our withdrawal from Afghanistan and look at this and say, is the United States a credible ally or partner? So I'm very much hoping that President Trump recognizes the failure that Afghanistan was and recognizes he can't repeat that in Ukraine and maintain a credible position in the world.
Right. And Tony, I mentioned values. Does morality matter when we can see Trump is trying to throw everything at stopping this war, stopping the deaths? Because it was Russia, the Russian side that invaded Ukraine in the first place. But what we seem to have seen over the past few weeks is, the comment about Zelensky being a dictator, who started the war, the UN resolution on the 3rd anniversary of Ukraine, where there was an equivalence that was adopted between the two sides in the UN Security Council. Does morality matter?
Absolutely, because for a country to remain credible as a leader of the world, we must maintain the morality. And like Admiral said, right now I believe President Trump is focusing on completing the war in Europe and put it to stop to it so that he can focus in Asia. And he's so focused on that he's taking drastic measures that's unconventional. And so I think that's what we're seeing now. I don't think the people in Taiwan should read too much into it, because his staff have mentioned again and again that China is our pacing threat, and we must take care of it for U.S. national security reasons. So I have no doubt that ultimately Taiwan will remain a critical U.S. national interest.
Can I follow up on that? First of all, it is absolutely inappropriate and wrong for us to say Russia did not start this war. They started the war. It's inappropriate and wrong to call President Zelensky a dictator. He's not a dictator. They're not having elections right now because they're in martial law. And having been there, I don't see any way you could effectively run elections right now, particularly in the Russian-occupied areas. And then third, it was wrong to vote. Our vote at the United Nations was wrong. The United States represents more than that. Now, I understand President Trump fancies himself a disruptor. And this is a great disruption he's doing. Unfortunately, it has the risk of destabilization. So I wish we were being more careful in our language and probably had started the maximum pressure campaign against Russia at the same time. But we have to withhold judgment till we see how this plays out over the next 2 to 3 months.
Absolutely. And I think what you had said earlier about now you hope that the maximum pressure campaign can turn and pivot onto Russia itself. If it does not, how will this influence China's thinking on its intention to take Taiwan?
So first, it is not good for Taiwan's relations with China for authoritarians to be doing well elsewhere. So for Russia to achieve success in Ukraine emboldens the Chinese Communist Party, I think, to some degree. Now, look, from my perspective, we always have to prepare for the most dangerous scenario, the idea of a cross-strait invasion. But the most likely scenario is what I mentioned earlier, this kind of cyber-enabled economic warfare, this campaign to break the resilience of Taiwan. What I'm afraid of is that the only thing that stops that happening right now is the belief that Chairman Xi has that he might not win a cross-strait invasion. You don't start the cyber-enabled economic warfare unless you know that if it escalates, you're okay at the top level.
You can follow through.
That's right. This kind of a Russian victory, even if it's a little Pyrrhic in Ukraine, emboldens him to say, you know what, I'll have success. If it really gets to that level in Taiwan, the United States doesn't have the backbone or the gumption to stay with this issue. Once he believes that, I believe he immediately begins to ratchet up the pressure on Taiwan and see how far he can go without the US or Japan or Australia or Europe responding. And that would be unhealthy for Taiwan.
Yeah, because I wanted to bring in the Greek historian Thucydides. This particular saying, the strong do what they can, or sometimes will, the strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. In some of the Chinese media, they have been drawing conclusions and saying, well, Trump respects power, therefore in the China-Taiwan issue, Trump would not stand up to China.
So certainly, historically, that has not been the U.S. position. We do not, China walks around and says to many neighbors, we're a big country, you're a small country, get in alignment. We historically haven't done that. I hope there's a return to a future where we don't act like that. The U.S. Congress does not believe that. And in the United States, while much of the foreign policy resides with the executive, the ability to really execute things and the resources to do it ride with the legislature. So I'm hoping the legislature can temper some of President Trump's more aggressive actions in support of that. Plus, I'm not 100% sure that he isn't going to bring, as I said, that maximum that pressure campaign against Russia as well. But I'm not surprised China reads a lot into what President Trump is doing because it feeds their narrative of how Taiwan should be treated. You can see it in the Serbian press, how they speak about Kosovo. You see every authoritarian taking advantage of U.S. apparent flip-flopping in position to say, of course, great powers should be able to exert their way over the weak.
So, Tony, we had better hope that pivot to the maximum pressure campaign on Putin and Russia comes quickly, because otherwise what happens to U.S. deterrence if the belief is that the U.S. wouldn't actually do anything?
Yeah, that actually creates a very dangerous situation. As Admiral Montgomery said, that gives Xi Jinping a little bit of hope that he's going to succeed, and we cannot allow him to ever think that way. So it actually will increase the instability in the region when we're trying to maintain stability. So I think U.S. need to continue to ensure that we express strongly that our desire to maintain the status quo, don't try to alter it, and also in the meantime building those deterrence factors such as building coalitions of like-minded countries who cares about Taiwan's democracy and continue to express their support for Taiwan. Therefore, maintain that pressure on China, saying don't make a foolish decision because we're here.